Middlemarch by George Eliot. Chapter 1. Miss Brooke. Miss Dorothea Brooke had the kind of beauty that looks even better in plain clothes. Her hands and wrists, in their plain sleeves, were like those of the Madonna in Italian paintings. Dorothea and her younger sister Celia lived with their uncle at Tipton Grange, a fine house near the town of Middlemarch. The Brookes were an old and respectable family. Both sisters dressed plainly because they considered ornamentation vulgar, but Dorothea's style of dress was also the result of religious feeling. She liked to read theological books and ask herself great questions about the purpose of life on earth. Such a woman does not spend time thinking about the latest fashions. The sisters had only recently moved into the area, so their neighbours were very interested in them. They thought that Dorothea was intelligent, but Celia had more common sense. Dorothea read too many books and did strange things. Once she knelt down by a sick labourer in the street and prayed for him. The neighbours thought that men might hesitate to ask for Dorothea's hand in marriage, even though she was beautiful and charming and had £700 a year of her own. They thought that she might spend all her husband's money on Christian charity, or argue with him about politics or religion. No, the neighbours did not approve of Miss Dorothea Brooke. They preferred Celia, who looked so innocent and friendly. Poor Dorothea! She was much more innocent than Celia, but unfortunately our faces do not always reflect our characters. Whenever a young man came to Tipton Grange, Dorothea thought that he must be in love with Celia. Sir James Chetham, for example, came frequently. Dorothea wondered whether Celia should marry him or not. She never thought that Sir James might want to marry Dorothea herself. If she had thought of it, it would have seemed ridiculous to her. She had no interest in a handsome, friendly baronet who always said "exactly" in reply to her comments, even when she had expressed uncertainty. Dorothea had very childlike ideas about marriage. She dreamed of marrying a much older man, a scholar involved in some great work. The really delightful marriage, she thought, must be one where your husband was a sort of father and could teach you even Hebrew if you wished it. One day Sir James was invited to dinner at Tipton Grange with another gentleman, the Reverend Edward Casaubon. Dorothea had never met Mr. Casaubon before. He was known in the area as a great scholar who was writing a book on religious history. Sir James and Mr. Casaubon sat opposite Dorothea at the dinner table. The contrast between them was extreme. Sir James had a pink face and red hair. He was a typical young Englishman in excellent health. Mr. Casaubon was tall and thin. His face was pale and his hair was grey. Dorothea thought his manners were very dignified. He listened patiently as Mr. Brooke talked foolishly. Dorothea was embarrassed by her uncle's foolish conversation.
Books now, yes, I have read many books on all different subjects,
said Mr. Brooke.
I am reading a very interesting book at the moment,
said Sir James.
It is full of excellent modern ideas about farming. I will try to put them into practice on one of my farms. Do you think that is a good idea, Miss Brooke?
I think that's a great mistake,
said Mr. Brooke.
It'll cost you a lot of money. The old ways are best, you know. Just let your tenants do the farming the way they've always done it. Then you can spend your money on new hunting dogs.
The land supports us all, rich and poor,
said Dorothea.
Surely it is better to spend money on farming than on sport.
She spoke with great energy, which was unusual in a young lady. Mr. Casaubon looked at her with more interest than before.
Young ladies don't understand political economy,
said Mr. Brooke, smiling at Mr. Casaubon.
Have you read much about political economy, Casaubon?
No,
replied Mr. Casaubon.
I have no time to read modern writers. My eyesight is weak, and I must use it for my work. I should find someone to read aloud to me in the evenings, but it must be someone with a good reading voice. My work is all about the ancient world. Sometimes I think my mind is like the ghost of an ancient, wandering about the world, trying to reconstruct it as it used to be. But I must be very careful of my eyesight.
Dorothea thought that Mr. Casaubon was the most interesting man she had ever met. To reconstruct a past world, what noble work!
Do you like riding, Miss Brooke?
asked Sir James. He had seen Dorothea riding a few days before. The fresh air had made her eyes shine and her cheeks pink. She had looked very charming.
If you do, I will send you a horse.
No, thank you,
said Dorothea.
I intend to give up riding.
Dorothea did not want to talk to Sir James. She wanted to listen to Mr. Casaubon. However, Mr. Casaubon was not speaking at the moment. Mr. Brooke was telling him that he had many documents, but he never knew where to find them.
Let me organise your documents for you, Uncle,
said Dorothea. Mr. Casaubon smiled and said,
You see, Mr. Brooke, you have an excellent secretary in the house.
No,
said Mr. Brooke.
I won't let young ladies touch my documents. Young ladies are too flighty.
When the two girls were in the drawing-room alone, Celia said,
How very ugly Mr. Casaubon is. He's so pale.
It is better to be pale than to be as pink as a cochon de lait,
said Dorothea.
Dodo!
cried Celia in surprise. Dorothea was clearly angry.
Celia, you look at human beings as if they were animals in clothes. You can't see the great soul in a man's face.
Does Mr. Casaubon have a great soul?
asked Celia, ironically.
Yes,
said Dorothea.
I think he does.
Over the weeks that followed, Dorothea saw Mr. Casaubon on several occasions. They had long conversations about his study, the key to all mythologies. Dorothea was convinced that he was an extraordinary man engaged in important research. When Mr. Casaubon asked for her hand in marriage, she accepted him with gratitude. She felt that she was starting a new life full of real significance.
With me at his side,
she thought,
Mr. Casaubon will be able to complete his life's work. I will read aloud to him, take notes for him, and comfort him when he's tired. I will learn how to live a great life, here, now, in England.
When the neighbours heard of Dorothea's engagement, they were shocked. How could a lovely young woman marry a dry stick of a man over twice her age? Mrs. Cadwallader, the vicar's wife, said that Dorothea had always been a strange girl. Sir James Chetham was deeply hurt and angry.
The man has no red blood in his body,
he said to Mrs. Cadwallader.
He has no right to marry a lovely young girl.
Mrs. Cadwallader tried to comfort him.
Don't worry, James,
she said.
I think that Celia likes you.
Sir James thought about Celia. She certainly was a charming and friendly young woman. During his engagement, Mr. Casaubon spent a lot of time at Tipton Grange. These visits made progress on his key to all mythologies difficult. He looked forward to getting married. Then he could return to work as usual. Mr. Casaubon was surprised at how little passion he felt in Dorothea's presence. Perhaps he thought there was something wrong with her, but he could see nothing wrong with her, so he concluded that the poets had exaggerated the force of passion. On one grey but dry day in November, Dorothea drove to Lowick, Mr. Casaubon's house, with her uncle and Celia. The house was of dark stone, and the windows were small. Old trees stood in the grounds around the house, so that very little sunlight reached the windows.
Oh dear,
said Celia.
Freshitt Hall is much better than this.
Freshitt Hall was Sir James's house, built of white stone, with a portico and a garden full of flowers. Dorothea liked Lowick. She liked the dark library and the gentle colours of the carpets and curtains. This was her future home. She looked at it with a kind of reverence. She did not wish to change anything. Upstairs, Dorothea chose her future bedroom. It was decorated in blues and greens, and had a large window. Looking around the room, Dorothea saw some miniature portraits.
Who are these ladies?
She asked.
That is my mother,
said Mr. Casaubon.
And the other lady is her sister.
The sister is pretty,
said Celia, implying that Mr. Casaubon's mother was not.
You never told me you had an aunt,
said Dorothea.
My Aunt Julia made an unfortunate marriage,
said Mr. Casaubon.
Shall we walk in the garden?
As they walked through the garden, they saw a young man with brown curly hair. He was sitting on a bench, sketching an old tree.
Who is that?
asked Mr. Brooke.
He is a relative of mine. In fact,
said Mr. Casaubon to Dorothea,
He is the grandson of my Aunt Julia, whose portrait you saw upstairs. Let me introduce you. This is my cousin, Mr. Ladislaw. Will, this is Miss Brooke.
Mr. Will Ladislaw had the same grey eyes and delicate nose that Dorothea had noticed in his grandmother's portrait. He did not smile. He looked rather discontented. They exchanged a little polite conversation, then Will sat down again, and the others continued their walk. As soon as they were out of sight, Will laughed aloud. Partly it was their discussion of his sketch that amused him, and partly it was the thought of his dry old cousin as the lover of that girl.
"What is your cousin's profession?"
asked Mr. Brooke as they walked on.
He refuses to choose a profession. He studied at Heidelberg. Now he wants to go abroad again, for the culture, he says. I'm afraid my cousin is a dilettante. He does not like hard work. I have tried to talk to him about it, but he won't listen.
"Do you give him the money for his travels?"
asked Mr. Brooke.
Yes, I agreed to pay for his education and help him get started in life.
That's very kind of you,
said Dorothea.
It's noble. I think we should all help each other.
A few days later, Will left for Europe. He did not say exactly where he was going, because he believed that genius needs freedom. He did not, however, understand a much more fundamental fact, that genius is the power to make or do not everything in general, but something in particular. Chapter 3. A Wedding Journey to Rome. 40 years ago, George IV was the King of England. The Duke of Wellington was Prime Minister. Mr. Vincey was the Mayor of Middlemarch, and Mrs. Casaubon, born Dorothea Brooke, went on her wedding journey to Rome. One day in December, Will Ladislaw was looking at the statues in the Vatican when his friend Naumann came up to him and said,
"Come and see this woman."
The two men went quickly and quietly down the corridor to another room where there was a beautiful marble statue of a Greek goddess. Standing near the statue was a lovely young woman dressed in plain grey clothes. She was not looking at the statue. Her large eyes were fixed dreamily on the sunlight coming through the window. Suddenly, she noticed that she was being watched. Without looking at the two men, she turned and walked away.
"What a contrast,"
said Naumann when she was gone.
"There is antique beauty, pagan and sensual, and here is living beauty, full of the consciousness of Christian centuries. If I painted a picture of it, I would make a dress as a nun."
"She's married to my cousin,"
said Will.
"I didn't know that they were coming to Rome."
"Do you mean that old man? I saw him with her earlier today. Go visit them. Introduce me to them. Maybe your cousin would like me to paint the lady's portrait."
"I don't know if I shall visit them or not, and English ladies have better things to do than to model for you. If you painted her, you would only paint the outside. Language is a finer medium for representing women."
"Yes, for those who can't paint,"
said Naumann. Will was offended and did not reply.
"I see,"
said Naumann.
"You are in love with your great-aunt, and no one else can look at her. This is serious, my friend."
"Don't joke about that lady, Naumann,"
said Will, irritated. He suddenly felt that something had changed in his relation to her. 2 hours later, Dorothea was in her apartment in the Via Sistina. I'm sorry to say that she was sobbing bitterly. Mr. Casaubon was in the Vatican. She did not expect him to come back for several hours. Dorothea had now been 5 weeks in Rome. She had seen the great ruins and the glorious churches, but she found it all rather oppressive. She preferred to go out to the country to be alone with the earth and the sky. During these first 5 weeks of marriage, her idea of Mr. Casaubon and her relation to him had gradually changed. Mr. Casaubon himself had not changed. He was exactly the same. Before they were married, she had thought of his learning as a noble search for truth, but now it seemed a dry and depressing activity. His mind had seemed to her like a fine building, high on a hill, with panoramic views and lots of fresh air. Now it seemed like a labyrinth, full of dark corridors that led nowhere. Whenever he suggested that she should see a building or a work of art, he said,
"Most people think it worth visiting."
If Dorothea asked him,
But what do you think?
he replied,
"It is very famous."
There's nothing more depressing for a passionate young mind than this kind of response, in which years of knowledge seem to have produced a complete absence of interest or sympathy. It seemed to her that Mr. Casaubon had forgotten the purpose of his own work. He spent his time writing sarcastic comments about other men's theories of the solar deities, and in doing so he had become indifferent to the sunlight. She might not have noticed these things so soon if he'd been warm and loving towards her, but he was not. She had a warm heart. She longed for someone to love and serve. She wanted someone to hold her hands and listen to her thoughts and tell her his own thoughts in return. But Mr. Casaubon was not like that. He spent his days working, and in the evenings he often seemed still to be thinking about his research. He'd not found marriage to be a state of intense delight. Nevertheless, he intended to be a good husband, and hoped to make Dorothea happy. That morning there had been an unpleasant scene between them. Dorothea had said to her husband,
"I hope you are satisfied with our time in Rome. I mean, as far as your studies are concerned."
"Yes,"
replied Mr. Casaubon.
"I have made some interesting notes. They are not absolutely necessary to my study, but they are of interest. Fortunately, your company has prevented me from working too hard."
"I'm very glad that my presence has made any difference to you,"
said Dorothea.
"I hope that when we get back to Lowick, I can be more useful to you."
"Certainly, my dear,"
said Mr. Casaubon.
"I will need you to copy out and organize the notes I have made here."
"Ah, yes, your notes,
said Dorothea.
and all those volumes of notes at Lowick. Don't you think that now may be the time to write your book? Will you decide what to include in the book and what to omit, so that the world can finally benefit from your vast knowledge? I will help you. I can be of no other use."
Dorothea ended with a sob and her eyes full of tears.
"My love,"
replied Mr. Casaubon. He seemed calm, even though her comment had hurt and shocked him deeply.
"I will know when the time has come to write my book. People who don't know what it is to work hard cannot understand true scholarship."
"I realize that I cannot fully understand your work,"
said Dorothea coldly.
"I simply wanted to be of use."
Both were shocked by the situation. Each had been angry with the other. Neither of them felt able to say the gentle words that could restore tranquility. Dorothea felt that all her efforts to participate in his life were coldly rejected. Mr. Casaubon felt as if he had invited one of his critics into his home. Instead of comforting him when others criticized him, Dorothea was herself becoming critical. When her servant, Tantrip, knocked on the door, Dorothea quickly dried her eyes.
"Come in,"
she said. Tantrip entered and said that a young gentleman had come to visit. She gave Dorothea a card on which was written the name Mr. Will Ladislaw.
"Thank you,"
said Dorothea.
"I'll come downstairs immediately."
Will stood up as Dorothea entered the drawing-room. He could see that she had been crying. She came towards him, smiling in an open, friendly way, and shook his hand. He was several years older than she, but at that moment he looked younger, for he blushed suddenly.
"I didn't know that you and Mr. Casaubon were in Rome until this morning, when I saw you in the Vatican Museum,"
he said.
"I hope you are both enjoying your time here."
"Thank you. Mr. Casaubon is not here at the moment. He is very busy, but he will be glad to hear that you called."
"If you will allow me, I will call again tomorrow when Mr. Casaubon is here,"
said Will.
"He goes to read in the Vatican Library every day. He's usually away from breakfast to dinner, but I'm sure he'll invite you to have dinner with us."
Will had never liked Mr. Casaubon. Now he felt angry with him. That dry old pedant had got this adorable young woman to marry him, and now he was passing his honeymoon away from her. The thought filled Will with a sort of comic disgust. He didn't know whether to laugh or insult Mr. Casaubon at the top of his voice. Will smiled at Dorothea, and she smiled back. Will Ladislaw's smile was delightful. His face seemed full of light.
"Something amuses you?"
asked Dorothea.
"Yes,"
said Will, quickly finding an excuse for his smile.
I'm thinking of the first time we met, when you criticised my poor sketch.
Criticised?
Said Dorothea in surprise.
I can't criticise art. I'm too ignorant about it.
You said that you couldn't see the relation of my sketch to nature.
That was really my ignorance,
said Dorothea.
I rarely see any beauty in pictures, even those that are considered very fine.
Will realised that she was entirely sincere.
I enjoy the paintings here very much,
he said.
But I probably learned how to enjoy them gradually. And I paint a little myself. That helps me to appreciate them.
Do you intend to become a painter?
Asked Dorothea.
Mr. Casaubon will be glad to hear that you've chosen a profession.
Oh, no,
said Will.
I've decided not to become a painter. I have some friends here who are German painters. They're brilliant fellows, but they look at life entirely from the point of view of painting. I don't want to do that.
Yes, I understand,
said Dorothea.
So many things seem more necessary than paintings. But if you have artistic talent, perhaps you should take that as your guide?
I'm afraid I don't have enough talent,
said Will. Her simple honesty made him feel that he could say anything to her.
And it is useless for me to try to become a great painter through hard work. If things don't come easily to me, I never get them.
I have heard Mr. Casaubon say that he wishes you were more patient,
said Dorothea gently. She was rather shocked at his way of taking all life as a holiday.
Yes, I know Mr. Casaubon's opinion. He and I differ.
The contempt in his reply offended Dorothea.
You are certainly different,
she said proudly.
I never thought of comparing you. Mr. Casaubon's diligence is rare.
Will saw that she was offended, but he did not like to hear her defending her husband.
Yes,
he replied.
That is why it's such a pity that it's wasted. If Mr. Casaubon could read German, he would save himself a lot of trouble.
What do you mean?
Asked Dorothea, surprised and anxious.
I mean,
said Will casually,
that the Germans have already done a lot of the work he is trying to do.
Will did not realize what pain his words caused her. The idea that all her husband's hard work might be useless filled her heart with pity and anxiety for him. When he saw the effect of his words, Will felt rather ashamed.
I think it's a great pity. I especially regret it because Mr. Casaubon has been so generous to me.
Dorothea looked up at him with tears in her eyes.
I was at school at Lausanne, and there were German teachers there. But I didn't study German. Oh, I wish I had. If I could read German now, I could be of use to him.
Will began to see why Dorothea had married Mr. Casaubon. She had imagined some romantic role for herself in this marriage. If Mr. Casaubon had been a dragon that had carried her away, Will would have rescued her and declared his love for her. But the situation was more complicated than that. At that moment, Mr. Casaubon came through the door. He was unpleasantly surprised to see Will there with Dorothea, especially since both of them seemed agitated. However, he was, as always, calm and polite. As he stood beside his young cousin, Mr. Casaubon looked even more faded than usual. Will gave an impression of sunny brightness. When he turned his head quickly, his hair seemed to radiate light. Mr. Casaubon, on the contrary, stood rayless. Dorothea did not notice the contrast, though she did see that her husband looked sad. She felt pity and tenderness for him. For the first time, she saw him as he actually was, not as her girlish dreams had made him. Mr. Casaubon invited Will to dinner the following day. Will accepted the invitation, and seeing that his cousin was tired, left immediately. Dorothea sat beside Mr. Casaubon and said,
Forgive me for speaking as I did this morning. I was wrong. I fear that I hurt you.
I'm glad you feel that, my dear,
said Mr. Casaubon.
But do you forgive me?
Asked Dorothea with a sob.
Yes, my dear. Don't distress yourself.
He wanted to tell her that she should not have received young Ladislaw in his absence, but he did not want to criticize her at the moment of her penitence. Chapter 4. Lowick. Mr. and Mrs. Casaubon arrived home from their wedding journey in January. A light snow was falling. Lowick looked different to Dorothea now. In the grey winter light it seemed dark and oppressive. During the first evening she realized that as mistress of Lowick she had no duties. The servants did everything. The morning after their arrival, Mr. Casaubon got up early. He said he had slept badly and was not feeling well. Nevertheless, he went into his study to work immediately after breakfast.
"What shall I do?"
Dorothea asked, and he replied,
"Whatever you like, my dear."
She felt as if she were in prison. Back in her room, Dorothea looked at the miniature portrait of Mr. Casaubon's Aunt Julia, who had made an unfortunate marriage. Was it only her family who thought that her marriage was a mistake, or did she herself regret it and cry about it in the silence of the night? Dorothea felt a new companionship with the portrait. It was the only object in the house that now seemed to have more interest and significance than it had possessed on her visit to Lowick nearly 3 months before. Julia was Will Ladislaw's grandmother. As Dorothea looked at the portrait, she imagined it changing gradually from a feminine face to a masculine one, full of light, which looked at her with great interest. Dorothea smiled at the portrait. Just then, Mr. Brooke and Celia arrived. Dorothea ran downstairs to greet them.
"Hello, my dear,"
cried Mr. Brooke.
"You do look well. I'm sure you enjoyed Rome, happiness, frescoes, the antique. It's very pleasant to have you back." But Casaubon looked a little pale.
Dorothea looked anxiously at her husband.
"You go off with Celia, my dear,"
continued Mr. Brooke.
"She has a great surprise for you, and she wants to tell you all about it."
Dorothea and Celia went to the blue-green room together.
Is Rome a nice place for a wedding journey?
Asked Celia, blushing.
"I don't think you would like it,"
Dorothea replied, thinking,
"No one will ever know my opinion of a wedding journey to Rome."
Mrs. Cadwallader says that wedding journeys are a mistake. She says you get tired of each other,
said Celia, blushing more deeply.
"Celia, has anything happened? What is your great surprise?"
Sir James has asked me to marry him.
Dorothea took her sister's face in her hands and looked at her anxiously. Celia's face seemed more serious than it used to do.
"And are you happy?"
she asked.
Yes.
"Oh, I'm so glad. Sir James is a good, honourable man."
One morning, a few weeks after her arrival at Lowick, Dorothea— but why always Dorothea? Is hers the only point of view from which to look at this marriage? I protest against all this interest in the young and beautiful. The old and ugly have feelings too. Mr. Casaubon had done nothing wrong in getting married. When he met Dorothea, he thought she was the ideal wife for him. He did not ask himself if he was the ideal husband for Dorothea. But that was not Mr. Casaubon's fault. Society never expects a man to ask if he is charming and handsome. He'd hoped to make his wife happy, and to find happiness himself. The one great anxiety of Mr. Casaubon's life was his key to all mythologies. The longer he worked on it, the more perfect, it seemed to him, the finished product had to be. He had published a few articles, and the critics had not liked them. The poor man had hoped to find comfort in marriage, but now he felt that Dorothea, too, was looking at his work critically. For that reason, he did not want her to help him in the library, but she insisted, so that finally she joined him every morning to read aloud or copy notes. One morning he said,
"Dorothea, here's a letter for you from Mr. Ladislaw. He wrote to me as well."
"Mr. Ladislaw?"
she said in surprise.
"I don't know what he wants to say to me, but I can imagine what he wrote to you."
During one of their conversations in Rome, Will had told Dorothea that he intended to stop taking money from Mr. Casaubon. He wanted to be independent. Dorothea admired him for his decision. In fact, Will wanted to be independent so that he need not feel ashamed of hating his benefactor and adoring his benefactor's wife.
In his letter to me, he asks if he can come and stay with us. I'm sorry, Dorothea, but I will tell him that a visit is not convenient at present. I've too much work to do.
They had not argued since that unpleasant morning in Rome. Their last argument had been so distressing that Dorothea had decided never to argue with him again. Nevertheless, when she spoke, her voice was angry.
Why do you think I want him to visit? If you don't want it?
I don't wish to argue,
said Mr. Casaubon. He started writing again, but his hand was trembling. Dorothea, too, went back to work. Her hand did not tremble as she copied the notes. She was still angry with her husband. They'd been working in silence for half an hour when Dorothea heard a book fall to the floor. Looking up, she saw Mr. Casaubon with his hands on his heart, as if in pain. She leapt up and ran to his side.
"Can I help you, dear?"
she said, her voice full of tenderness and anxiety. She led him to a large chair. Just then, Sir James and Celia arrived. Sir James said,
"We must send for a doctor immediately. I can recommend Lydgate. Do you want me to get him?"
Casaubon made a silent sign of approval. As he left the room, Sir James thought of how Dorothea looked, with her arms around her husband and that expression of deep sorrow on her face.
"Ah, what a noble creature she is,"
he thought. He did not know that she felt shame and penitence as well as sorrow. Mr. Casaubon stayed in bed for the next few days. Lydgate came often. On the third day he asked if he could speak to Dorothea alone. They went into the library together.
"Mrs. Casaubon, your husband has a disease of the heart,"
began Lydgate. He did not want to distress her, but he felt he should be honest.
"He might live another 15 years, but only if we are very careful. He should avoid all unnecessary stress and anxiety. He should try to work less and get more exercise."
"He would be miserable if he had to give up his work,"
said Dorothea.
"I know,"
Lydgate replied.
"But we must try to vary and moderate his occupations. There is no immediate danger of another attack, but, on the other hand, death is often sudden in these cases."
There was silence for a few moments. Dorothea looked as if she had been turned to marble. Finally she spoke.
"Please help me,"
she said.
"Tell me what I can do."
"Well,"
said Lydgate,
"perhaps you can travel to Europe together. That might be good for his health."
"No,"
said Dorothea, tears filling her eyes.
"He does not like travel."
"I'm sorry to have caused you such pain,"
said Lydgate. He suspected that there was some deep sadness in this marriage, and he wondered what it was.
"I'm glad that you have told me the truth,"
replied Dorothea.
"I won't say anything to Mr. Casaubon. I'll just tell him not to work too hard. Anxiety of any kind might make him worse."
"Oh, you are a wise man, aren't you?"
cried Dorothea, with a sob in her voice.
"You know all about life and death. Help me. Tell me what I can do. He has been working all his life. He cares about nothing else. And I care about nothing else."
For years after, Lydgate remembered this appeal, this cry from one soul to another. But how could he help her? All he could do was say,
"Goodbye, Mrs. Casaubon. I will come again tomorrow."
That evening, Lydgate told Rosamond about his conversation with Mrs. Casaubon.
"She seems to have a very strong feeling for her husband, even though he is a formal, studious man, almost 30 years older than she."
"Of course she's devoted to her husband,"
said Rosamond. Lydgate was delighted that she seemed to think that a woman necessarily loved her husband. At that moment, Rosamond was thinking,
"If Mrs. Casaubon's husband dies, she will be a very rich woman."
But she said,
"Is she very handsome?"
"He certainly is handsome,"
Lydgate replied.
"but I haven't thought about it."
Left alone in the library, Dorothea noticed Will's letters lying on Mr. Casaubon's desk. She thought,
"I must put them away, so that he doesn't see them when he comes back to the library."
Mr. Brooke was at Lowick that day. Dorothea gave him Will's letter to Mr. Casaubon and said,
"Please write to Mr. Ladislaw, uncle, and tell him about Mr. Casaubon's illness. Tell him that we are sorry. He can't come to visit."
All right, my dear.
Mr. Brooke read the letter and decided that Will was an excellent writer and a very clever young man. Mr. Brooke, who was a magistrate, was thinking of running for Parliament. Recently he had bought one of the local newspapers as a vehicle for his ideas on reform.
I'll need a clever young man to help me,
he thought.
Someone who can write good speeches and editorials. This young Ladislaw is just the type of fellow I need.
Although Mr. Brooke began his letter with the intention of telling Will not to come to Middlemarch, he ended it by inviting him to stay at Tipton Grange. He did not tell Dorothea what he had written in his letter, because he did not think that it was important. So, several weeks later, Will came to Middlemarch and stayed at Tipton Grange. At first, Dorothea was anxious about what Mr. Casaubon might think of Will being her uncle's guest, but Mr. Casaubon said nothing. He had never liked Will, and now he disliked him even more. Sometimes Mr. Brooke brought Will to Lowick. For Dorothea, Will's company was like a window opened in the wall of her prison, letting in fresh air and sunshine. He listened to what she said, and his own conversation was lively and interesting. But Will was dissatisfied. He wanted to see Dorothea alone.
I will watch over her,
he said to himself.
She will know that she has one slave in the world.
Dante and Beatrice did not see each other often, nor did Petrarch and Laura. But times had changed since then. Now it was better to have fewer sonnets and more conversation. One morning, Will went to Lowick when Mr. Casaubon was not there. The servant showed him into the library where Dorothea was sitting alone.
Mr. Casaubon is out. He may not be back until dinner,
she said as she shook his hand.
I really came in the hope of seeing you alone,
said Will.
I wanted to talk to you, as we did in Rome. It always makes a difference when other people are present.
Yes,
said Dorothea.
I enjoyed our conversations in Rome. It seems strange to me how many things I said to you.
I remember them all,
said Will. He felt that she deserved to be perfectly loved, and I think his own feelings at that moment were perfect. He was completely happy just to be in her presence.
I've been learning Latin and Greek,
said Dorothea.
I can be of more use to Mr. Casaubon now. But the scholar's life is a difficult one. His work makes him so tired.
If a man is capable of great thoughts, he'll have them before he's old and tired,
said Will. He saw in her face that he had said too much.
But it's quite true that brilliant men sometimes make themselves ill by working too hard.
I used to think that, even when I was a little girl, I thought that I would like to help someone who was doing great work. That was what I wanted to do with my life.
But you must be careful of your own health,
said Will.
You look pale. Do you spend too much time in the house? Mr. Casaubon should get a secretary to help him.
I want to help him,
said Dorothea earnestly.
If I didn't help him, I would have nothing to do. Please don't mention that again.
Certainly not, now that I know your feelings. But I've heard Mr. Brooke and Sir James Chetham make the same suggestion.
Yes, they want me to ride horses and do the things that other women do,
she said impatiently.
But my mind has other wants. I thought you knew that.
Forgive me. At one time, Mr. Casaubon himself wanted a secretary. In fact, he asked me to be his secretary. But I was not good enough.
You didn't work hard enough?
Asked Dorothea, smiling.
No. But I have noticed that Mr. Casaubon doesn't like anyone to know exactly what he's working on. He's too uncertain of himself. I know I didn't work hard enough, but the real reason he dislikes me is because I disagree with him.
Mr. Casaubon paid for your education, even though he disliked you,
said Dorothea.
That's admirable.
Yes. He has been honourable about that. My grandmother was disinherited because she married someone her family disliked. Her husband was a Polish refugee, a teacher. He had no money, but he was intelligent. He could speak many languages. My grandparents both died young. My father was very musical. He taught music for a living, but he never made much money from it. My mother was a rebel too, like my grandmother Julia. She ran away from home and became an actress. I don't remember much about my father, except what my mother told me. I remember when he was dying, and I was very hungry and had only a little bit of bread.
Oh, what a different life from mine,
said Dorothea.
I have always had too much of everything. Tell me about it.
My father had written a letter to Mr. Casaubon, and that was my last hungry day. My father died, but Mr. Casaubon took care of my mother and I. Well, he has probably told you all this himself.
No,
said Dorothea.
He never talks about his own honourable actions. You see, he's been very good to you, and now he's ill. Try not to dislike him.
I'll never complain about him again,
said Will.
I'll never again do or say anything of which you disapprove.
That's very good of you,
said Dorothea, smiling.
You make me feel like a queen. But soon you'll leave Middlemarch, and I won't be able to rule you any more.
I want to ask you about that. It's one of the reasons I wish to speak to you alone,
said Will.
Mr. Brooke has offered me a position as editor of his newspaper. If you don't think I should accept his offer, I'll say no. But, if you approve, I'll accept. I prefer to stay here than go away.
I think you should stay,
said Dorothea at once. At that moment she saw no reason why she should say no.
Then I will stay,
said Ladislaw. But then Dorothea thought she'd made a mistake. She remembered that her husband felt differently. She blushed deeply, angry with herself for having said something that opposed her husband's wishes.
But my opinion isn't important,
she said.
You should ask Mr. Casaubon.
He got up to leave. He wanted to ask her not to mention the subject to Mr. Casaubon, but he was afraid to do so. She was so honest and sincere, he did not want her to change. And he was afraid that she might think less of him for asking it. So he just said goodbye and left the house. At 4 o'clock, Mr. Casaubon returned, looking happier than usual.
I met Dr. Spanning today, my dear, and he said some complimentary things about my article on the Egyptian mysteries.
I'm very glad,
said Dorothea, delighted to see her husband smiling.
It's a pity you weren't here earlier. Mr. Ladislaw called. He mentioned that my uncle has offered him work as editor of his newspaper. Do you think he should accept the position?
Did Mr. Ladislaw come to ask my opinion?
Said Mr. Casaubon. All the pleasure that had been in his face when he spoke of Dr. Spanning was gone.
No, but when he mentioned my uncle's offer, he of course expected me to tell you about it.
Mr. Casaubon was silent. The next morning he wrote the following letter to Will.
Dear Mr. Ladislaw, I hear that you have been offered a position on a Middlemarch newspaper. If you accept that offer, I will be very offended. I have a high social position to maintain. Editing a newspaper is not, in my opinion, honourable and respectable work. If you accept the position, you will no longer be welcome to call at Lowick. Yours sincerely, Edward Casaubon.
Mr. Casaubon did not tell Dorothea about this letter.